Modern geopolitical power isn't measured in the weight of an armored division, but in the ability to freeze $300 billion of a rival's central bank reserves with a single digital directive. The American dollar functions as a silent enforcement mechanism. By controlling the rails that money moves on, the U.S. can effectively disconnect any nation from the global economy. This control is built into the pricing of survival itself. When a country buys oil, orders semiconductors, or imports grain, the transaction almost always requires conversion into U.S. dollars. This creates a global requirement for every central bank to hold massive piles of dollars just to ensure their citizens can eat and power their homes. Since the end of the Second World War, the dollar's role as the world's primary reserve currency was viewed as a permanent fixture of the international order. However, the data shows a clear retreat. In 1999, the dollar accounted for over 70% of global foreign exchange reserves. Today, that number has dropped to roughly 58%. Analysts like Daniel Carter are tracking a rise in non-traditional reserve currencies as nations begin to diversify their holdings to avoid overexposure to U.S. policy. The stability of the old system is being tested by a gradual, calculated withdrawal of international confidence. China is accelerating this shift by providing the first viable alternative to the American-led financial stack. Beijing is establishing a network of clearinghouses that allow nations to settle trades directly in yuan, removing the need for a U.S. bank to act as the middleman. These new trade routes bypass the SWIFT messaging system entirely, ensuring the flow of goods continues uninterrupted. By focusing on the global south, China is building a parallel economy where the dollar is no longer a prerequisite for growth. This strategy targets the technological infrastructure of money, replacing Western-controlled rails with proprietary Chinese networks. The dollar math that has sustained U.S. influence relies on a cycle. Nations sell goods to the U.S., receive dollars, and then lend those dollars back to the U.S. government by buying treasuries. That cycle is breaking in the energy sector. Major exporters are now negotiating oil sales in yuan and euros, which means they have fewer dollars left over to invest back into American debt. Agricultural trade is following the same path. Brazil and China recently reached an agreement to trade farm products in their own currencies, removing a multi-billion-dollar sector from the dollar's reach. Each commodity removed from the dollar clearing system reduces the global requirement to hold dollars in reserve, gradually eroding the U.S. government's ability to finance its own spending through foreign investment. We are entering an era of friction between two distinct economic realities, one attempting to preserve its historical leverage and another seeking to insulate itself. This tension forces every central bank to make a strategic choice about where to store their national wealth and which system to trust when a crisis hits. The global market is transitioning from a single currency monopoly to a multipolar environment where the dollar must compete for its position. For the first time in nearly 80 years, the U.S. dollar is no longer the only viable option for the world's trade. These shifting reserve percentages represent a concrete change in the cost of American debt. As global demand for the dollar softens, the U.S. loses its unique ability to export its inflation to the rest of the world. This forces the domestic economy to absorb more of the impact of currency devaluation, higher costs for imported electronics, higher costs for basic clothing, and energy for the average consumer. The dollar may remain a major player, but its era of absolute authority is over, and the resulting shift will dictate the cost of living for the next generation.